So maybe we can call things to order for, I guess, part 2 of our Woodlands Virtual Forum program, the second of a 4-part series. So I'd like to welcome everybody and say a big hello. My name is Peter Robichaud with the Canadian Woodlands Forum, and if you're able to join us for our first, for part 1, welcome back. For the benefit of those who this is maybe your first webinar attending with us, certainly want to wish everybody a sincere and heartfelt hello here from us here at the CWF. We're certainly pleased to be able to reach out to you in this fashion as part of our ongoing commitment to serving our members and keeping you connected and informed. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. I'll be calling on our speakers shortly, who will share their presentations on the screen. But sort of unlike our in-person events, certainly we're somewhat limited, I guess, as part of interacting within the group. However, the platform does allow everybody to post questions, which you can do just by hovering over the Q&A icon at the bottom to the left, towards the left of your screen. And what we're going to do is essentially compile those questions, read them out loud, and they'll be addressed by our speakers. First come, first serve, until time kind of permits. So you can post your questions at any time during the presentation. So for our session today, we've invited the folks from the Canadian Wood Fibre Centre to provide some interesting updates on the Enhanced Forest Inventory Program, which has truly become a game changer in forest management planning and the forest value chain. So to get us started, I'm pleased to introduce Adam Dick with the Fibre Centre based in Fredericton. And just hang tight, I'm just going to invite Adam to join us. And we'll bring Adam up on the screen. There he is. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Peter. So I'm going to share my presentation.
Yeah, while you're loading up there, I'm just going to kind of introduce you. Just hang tight here. All right. Just wondering. All right, I've lost my screen.
Oh.
Yeah, in that regard, just to say a few words to introduce you.
Well, you want me to introduce myself, Peter?
Yeah, how about you just do that? Why don't we improvise?
Okay. Great. All right.
Awesome.
So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be joining everyone today to give an update on things we're working on. I think most of you might know me. I've been with the Fibre Centre. It'll be 3 years in January. It's gone by quickly. Prior to that, worked with Department of Natural Resources in New Brunswick with a focus on growth and yield, wood supply modeling, and then into forest inventory. It's been, it's been an interesting path for me in that, when I was with the province, I was working closely with Fibre Centre to get the science around enhanced forest inventory implemented into the real world through the adoption of it as the provincial forest inventory. Now I'm in the Fibre Centre, really assisting other provinces as they go through that journey and supporting and continuing the research and the development. And I'm pretty excited to be presenting today on really what was originally intended to be the purpose of enhanced forest inventory, not only to just state that we have a better new inventory, but really supporting and understanding what are the tools that we're going to need to really leverage that new data, as well as a whole bunch of other data, not only, to really improve our decision-making process around forest management. So I'm going to give a brief outline. We don't have a whole lot of time together, so I'm going to try to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to give a quick update on sort of where we've been in terms of inventory development, where we're going. I'm going to give you guys a reading assignment. I wanted to kind of, leave you guys with something. There's unfortunately no opportunity to meet afterwards. And so I wanted to leave something tangible with people so you could leave the presentation. You've got some further reading to do to help reinforce maybe some of the messages. And then we're going to give a brief overview on sort of how we'll get there. So the work that we've been doing over the past year or so to really build the framework that allows us to fully leverage enhanced forest inventory. The timing is good for this. I was supposed to have presented this at the spring meeting. Unfortunately, we all know what happened. But you know, we've got a bit of updates to provide now, so it's not bad timing to do it now either. So in terms of enhanced forest inventory, as you know, for the past 10 years or so, we've been focused in New Brunswick on transitioning what has traditionally been a strategic forest level forest inventory into something that would provide us resolution that allowed us to act at the operational scale. In New Brunswick, we're largely complete. We have 100% coverage of LiDAR and enhanced forest inventory. You can see the canopy height model on the right, for example, a 1 meter resolution, raster of the entire province, showing the height of every tree. Progress is going by rapidly in other provinces to get to the same point. I know Nova Scotia has made a lot of progress. PEI was completely covered with LiDAR this summer. Province of Quebec, I believe in next year, the year following, will have area under management covered with LiDAR. There's a large initiative in Ontario. So we're slowly seeing the progress across the country where LiDAR or a remote sensing derived high resolution inventory is quickly becoming the standard. And a lot of that focal work to really demonstrate that it could be done practically at scale happened in New Brunswick. And so it's been a nice journey to be able to follow through and be able to participate in it. On the left-hand side really reinforces, why were we after that high resolution inventory? It wasn't just to have an inventory, as I said, it was to move away on that hierarchy you see at the top, the strategic forest management plan process, and we really traditionally had a strategic forest inventory, to really wanting to make sure that we can translate that down through the scales to the tactical, down to the operational, and the arrows are very important, that we can feed that information back around so that we start with an operational inventory, we can scale that up to the tactical, answer questions strategically, and when we execute at the bottom, all of the information about what we're actually doing is feeding back up and informing our how we plan for the next time around. It's a huge quantity of data. The inverted pyramid, I've shown this before, going from about 1.1 million forest interpreted polygons up to, on a 20 meter grid, 168 million EFI predictions over New Brunswick. If we go to a tree level basis, which conceivably we could do, we're talking about, estimated about 12 billion trees that we've got captured, that we have information about, that we can start making decisions with. Just a huge volume of data. It's not good enough just to, start with that data and hand it off to people. We really need to advance. How do we make decisions with that data? How do we distill it down into meaningful snippets of information that we can execute on? And so to start that conversation, we were fortunate before COVID locked everything down. We had been working in fall of 2019 to work on organizing a workshop in New Brunswick to start getting some insight into what were the forest sector needs in terms of really leveraging that data. We brought in some invited experts from other academic institutions from Finland to sort of demonstrate what is the art of the possible, what is the state of the art in other jurisdictions where we could conceivably head. The picture you see is the last time I've ever been in a crowded room. I don't know when we'll be able to do that again, but I mean, as everyone knows, it's a really effective way over 2 days to have conversations and talk with people and figure out what priorities are. We were fortunate to have other government level partners at the table as well, from the province, from National Research Council, from ACOA, New Brunswick RDC. And so it was really an all hands on deck trying to figure out how we could support these initiatives going forward. And so we learned a lot of conclusions. We heard a lot of things at that workshop. Just to quickly summarize sort of the key priorities that we identified, the enhanced forest inventory, we still need to make incremental improvements on that. Important one being species identification, volume and product estimation to really truly make it operational. Having accurate estimates at that scale is important. So we're trying to work on that. Harvester head data was really identified as an important data stream that we could potentially use. Again, as we talked, really development of tools to mine the EFI and other data sets, dashboarding, really make sense of that data and understand what it means. Getting it into a real-time paradigm, so we're not dealing with static data anymore. As the forest changes through growth, as we operate in the forest, we want to capture those changes and the information that's generated through those changes. We want to feed that back through. And then further, we need to enhance our collaboration. There's a lot of stakeholders at different levels of agility and aptitude in these things, and we need kind of all hands on deck to get everyone up to speed. The figure on the right, you may have seen this one, but I think it really encapsulates where we want to move from, data to information to knowledge, to insight to wisdom, and we really want to get to wisdom. I think, if I can assess right now, if you think about a LiDAR point cloud is probably data, an enhanced forest inventory, I've started to transform that into information. I then want to aggregate that into, say, operational units. That might be my knowledge, and really how I start planning that becomes my insight and my wisdom. And that's really the road, the path that we want to follow down to transform this data from just data and information into wisdom and insight and things that we can use to make sense of our world that we work in. At the same time, we acknowledge, over the past years, we've been digitizing a whole lot of other data streams across the value chain, not only about the forest characterization, but the activities we're carrying out in the forest, right through to the manufacturing facilities, mill yard inventories and so on. And then, better insight into, commodity markets and customer demand. And we have potentially much more agility enabled to react to those changes in customer demand. This summer obviously is a great example with a run on softwood lumber for building decks and renovations and so on, and all of the impacts through COVID. We really want to be able to be have a system where we can respond to those changes at the forest level and be agile. So in terms of a reading assignment, this it was very timely. If you're familiar with the consulting group McKinsey, they published this article just the end of October, titled "Data: The Next Wave in Forestry." Peter, in the last update email he sent out prior to this, I believe he included the link to this. Otherwise, if you just Google "Data: The Next Wave in Forestry," you'll find it. I'd encourage you to read it. I think it encapsulates good what we're working on. And as it says at the bottom, to achieve both environmental and production goals, the forestry industry needs effective management and harvesting processes. Today, they're being transformed through more effective use of data, and so that's really encapsulates what we're trying to work towards. I'll go through a few of the figures just to try to summarize the article a little bit. The first one here, and I'm really curious as I present these, and unfortunately in this forum I can't really get feedback in terms of head nodding and things like that. But I really want to understand is what they're reporting in here, is it relevant to where we are in Atlantic Canada? In Canada, I hope there's some parallels. The research is based on Sweden. I'm hoping there's enough similarities. The first observation they made was that, harvest productivity is, for the past 20 years or so, is really stagnated, at least in Sweden. There was large gains in productivity through moving from, horses and, rudimentary harvesting equipment into chainsaws, into the first mechanization, cable skidders and the grapple skidders and so on. In phase 3, sort of mechanization 2, Sweden's productivity increased 300%, than 25 years, real big gains. And then since about 2005 or so, productivity really hasn't increased, as measured by, they're measuring it as standing volume per worker day in the Swedish forest industry. I'm curious about the x-axis, the y-axis there, if those numbers are relevant, or are people experiencing the stagnation in productivity? The second observation is, again, looking at a few different forestry regions, that we have a large gap. We have a big opportunity to increase our efficiency. They're measuring efficiency as overall equipment effectiveness. So it's not, I'm in a cab and I'm operating on a block, how productive is my machine when I'm running my harvest operation, but overall, for downtime, for maintenance, for floating, for downtime because I got to the wrong block with the wrong equipment, sort of overall, how effective is my use of my equipment. Again, I'm curious to see, they're highlighting Russia, Chile, and Sweden. Are these numbers relevant in our context? They observe that in jurisdictions with higher labor costs, that effectiveness, seems to increase. So, the more my labor is, the more efficient I want to be with that labor. Key finding was closing that gap a little bit, improving overall equipment effectiveness by 5%, for example, results in a reduction of costs of between 10 to 20%. So there's really a huge opportunity there of better use of my equipment and significantly reducing my costs. So that, I would say, is the opportunity that we present through this work, is really a reduction in costs through increased efficiency. The efficiency comes from using that equipment better because I've got a data stream that tells me where that machinery should be. Truck dispatching. So am I waiting for an inventory roadside and I don't have the trucking capacity I need to get it to a mill? Do I have backups and trying to load trucks? And basically the message is to really look at across all sectors of that value supply chain, from the stump to the mill yard, starting with that and looking at all aspects and how they're linked, and sort of the domino effect of inefficiency or lag or anything that's going to slow me down at any step along the way, and how that accumulates through the entire supply chain. And really the message is data of having awareness and understanding and being able to optimize that all the way across gives me insight into where is my time lost, what can I do to improve that, and how can I overall improve my efficiency. So again, I'd encourage you to read that. Feel free to reach out to me afterwards if you have any insights into what you read, what you learned, if it's relevant here. I guess the question I would pose to people, and then we can discuss it after in the questions too, is where do you observe, where do you think there's the most gain to be had? Where should we focus our effort in trying to increase that efficiency? I'll quickly just highlight some of the things we've been working on since the workshop in February. It was fortunate we had the workshop in February, but then everything locked down and we just, we lost a lot of the momentum, and we're slowly getting that momentum back up to speed. We've had some initiatives that we've been able to get underway. As I mentioned, harvester head data was identified as an important potential data stream. We funded a project with the Northern Hardwood Research Institute to the level of $244,000 over 2.5 years. The real focus of that is to field validate some of these data streams through, again, STEM analysis and scaling. Just get a sense of the data I'm collecting off of that harvester head, in terms of spatial accuracy that I might be able to achieve with it. Things around calibration of the harvester head and so on. What is the quality of the data stream that I'm generating there? We know there's already solution providers out there that can stream that data back into your office and make it accessible. We're not necessarily going to focus on that, really more on if a forest company were to want to make an investment in getting that data accessible to them, what are the incremental benefits that they can expect to see from having that data. Alongside that, we're conducting, my colleague Jean-Martin Lucier is organizing a survey of the forest sector to better understand sort of how that OEM data off the harvesters is currently being used, how accessible it is, and so on, just so we're learning about this as we go along, and we want to get a better feel for it. Incremental improvements in enhanced forest inventory. We have some analytical teams within NRCan that we're working with that have some advanced tools in artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're feeding them data that we've been working with for the past few years to try to find solutions. And we're really, giving it to them. They're not foresters, but we're hoping with a fresh set of eyes, looking at it from a different approach, they might pick up on something that we've been missing and allow us to get some incremental gains and some improvements in our predictions. Also on the right, we're really looking at, once we get harvester head data or scaling data, being able to feed that back through around and going into reinforcement learning. So my EFI predicted that I was going to be able to harvest this. I got this roadside. How do I use that information on my actuals to improve for the next block what I estimate to be my operational net down between the EFI and what I'm likely to get roadside. Wood flow modeling is something that we're kind of, we're using this as the umbrella. It's sort of what we envision as the hub for all of the information, the EFI, the harvester head data, all my information about the decisions I'm about to make, and then coming back in how I executed that and allowing for those feedback loops to happen. We're thinking about the infrastructure of what's going to be required to store all that data, what kind of common or shared tools we need to build on top of that, standardization of data. Really important is rules on sharing and access if we're going to have some combined data sets here. So we don't have a project per se on that one yet, but it's certainly going to be central to the work that we're doing. Another one that I think you'll be hearing about soon is over the winter. We want to really understand what is the level of geospatial capacity within the forest sector. So we're planning another survey of forest companies, private woodlot, marketing boards and organizations, indigenous communities and organizations. What we want to do is make sure that when we produce solutions, that we're not building something that is not readily adoptable by a broad set of organizations. We want to understand where the capacity gaps are and find common solutions to bring everyone up to a level where everyone can take advantage of this. And then finally, as I said, we're just starting into this. There's still things that we need to address. We were hoping, if we'd been able to travel this year, to get out and get a better understanding of what is the solution provider ecosystem out there. What are some approaches in other jurisdictions? We're still slowly getting into that. Data sharing, privacy, aggregation, and hosting, as I said, is surely to become an issue as we want to share data and understand if I relinquish control of a little bit of my data, what do I get back in return for that? All of that leads to data standardization so that everyone's feeding common data into a repository, and we lower the level of work I need to do to get that standardized. Further leveraging of remote sensing data. We're really starting to talk now, building in up front, what do I need to track so that at the end I have some economic indicators to quantify what is my return on investment of some of these initiatives. We want to be aware of that up front so that it's not a big hassle to do after the fact. And then to continue these conversations going, we really want to work on this collaborative framework, some governance around, getting everyone around the table, continuing to have those conversations, and keeping things moving forward. So that's it. I should mention, a lot of these initiatives we're piloting in New Brunswick initially, but the intent is certainly to whatever gets developed, and we do case studies in New Brunswick, that we can readily transfer that knowledge to other jurisdictions as EFI becomes available and so on. But we're focused on New Brunswick for now, but we'll certainly be sharing the results with everyone as they become available. And that's it. Thank you very much. Peter, I guess I'll hand it back to you if you want to facilitate questions.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adam. If you want to maybe just unshare your screen there,
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind. Awesome. Perfect. So yeah, let's just see if we've got any questions. Maybe what we can do, Adam, is we'll let people digest that, and
Sure.
we'll kind of queue up our questions there for the end. So excellent presentation, and I appreciate that update. Very interesting, especially in the operational sense. I think there's some definite gains there in moving forward. So.
And Peter, I'll say that's the real benefit of the Woodlands Forum. As you know, when we can gather together, we've got soup to nuts the representation of the forest sector. So it's a really good forum to get insights across that value chain. So
awesome.
I'm glad to be able to present it here.
All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put Adam away here a little bit, so to speak, and I'm going to introduce James Farrell. And all right, there's James. So anyway, welcome, Jamie. James has worked for NRK and Canadian Forest Service for the past 25 years in a broad range of research areas, including pest management, silviculture, and most recently enhanced forest inventory using LiDAR. So James graduated from the forestry program at Algonquin College in '91, and he continued his undergraduate studies at St. Thomas University and later the University of New Brunswick. He'll focus on a study that he's been working on to investigate the degree to which LiDAR pulse density affects species classification at the individual tree level. So with that, with a greater understanding of species classification actually at various scales will certainly ultimately result in better planning and overall forest management. So Jamie, we certainly look forward to your presentation entitled Individual Tree Species Classification Using Low and Mid Density Airborne LiDAR. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to disappear again.
All right. Okay. Everybody sees that okay, I assume. So, yeah, good afternoon, and thank you for the introduction, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone again. Even though it is virtual, it's always nice to get together. And as always, that was a great presentation by Adam to get us thinking about how things are quickly changing in the forest sector. So today I'm going to talk about species prediction using airborne LiDAR. But first I'm going to give you an outline followed by a brief overview of the Canadian Wood Fibre Centre research program. So I'm going to start off by introducing the project and research questions. Then I'll provide some background info, followed by methods. Then I'll share some results. I'll then talk about some challenges to species prediction and finally discuss future research. So as mentioned, I work for the Canadian Wood Fibre Centre, and the Fibre Centre is of course part of the Canadian Forest Service inside Natural Resources Canada. So the Fibre Centre's integrated research teams are located across the country at the CFS's regional offices in the National Capital Region and at the Petawawa Research Forest in Chalk River. Even though Acadia Research Forest is under the jurisdiction of the Atlantic Forestry Centre, I've included it as well, just because of the amount of ongoing Fibre Centre research and collaboration that we do there. But the design of the Fibre Centre allows us the flexibility to research broader issues while maintaining a presence in all the regions. So I'll just quickly show you the Fibre Centre's research priorities or outputs. Output 1 is characterization of forest biomass and the enhancement of fiber production for the bioeconomy. Output 2 is modeling of growth and yield of trees under global change and adaptive silviculture. And output 3, development of innovative solutions for forest management 4.0, which I believe is what Adam was just kind of a lot of his work is nestled in that. But I'll be focusing on output number 1, characterization of forest biomass, which is where EFI and the improvement of tree species prediction falls within our research program. This includes testing of various approaches and parameters in order to better understand remote species prediction. Monitoring the resource and state of forests strongly rely on remote sensing technology for quick, precise, and repetitive measurements of large areas. This technology makes it possible to address climate change and value forests for a carbon economy through detailed, updated forest inventories. In the last decade, airborne LiDAR has been applied to get better estimates of forest attributes for enhanced forest inventory. And terrestrial LiDAR is another tool providing very fine plot level information. The deliverable aims at addressing cutting edge research questions on monitoring with the best precision available and the Canadian, the state of the Canadian forest at different spatial scales. So we make use of state-of-the-art methods and remote sensing instruments such as LiDAR to improve our capacity in valuing trees through their structural attributes. Accurate remote species ID, that's something that everyone wants, from industry to environmental groups. We've seen many advances using LiDAR for area-based predictions for common metrics such as height, basal area, diameter, density, and volume. These area-based predictions typically made on the 20 by 20 meter predictive unit. So to complement the area-based approach, an individual tree approach looking at tree level point cloud metrics is an active area of research into determining species. So included in this approach is investigating point density, where we try to gain a greater understanding of point clouds and their value in species predictions. The following research questions will be addressed in this study, which also happens to be my master's project under Dr. David McLean at the University of Brunswick. So how accurately can individual tree species be predicted using 1 point per square meter airborne LiDAR and 6 point per square meter airborne LiDAR? And how does accuracy vary by species, genus, hardwood, softwood groups or types, and size classes? And finally, what are the most important features for classifying individual tree species, and how does pulse density contribute? I'm going to start with a quick refresher. So in LiDAR, or light detection and ranging, laser pulses are emitted from a sensor on the underside of an aircraft, and through GPS technology, the geolocation of the objects, or the XYZ coordinates of those objects, are determined when the beam makes contact with any object and is reflected back to the sensor as a return or echo. Intensity, or the amount of reflected light energy, it's also recorded. So a cluster of these XY positions are referred to as a point cloud, and is shown here. More pulses over a given area equals a higher density point cloud, of course. So with that, the goal is to identify specific clusters of points and assign species. This could be done through the calculation of metrics such as proportions of height diameter to diameter of crown, and other various measurements. Also, outer geometry, how pointy or how round is that point cloud, and vertical distribution of points, and the porosity, if there's holes throughout the crown or not. So I talk about my study area. It's located at the Acadia Research Forest in Newnan, near Fredericton. This 9,000 hectare forest has been used by researchers since 1933 and is home to some of the oldest documented forest research studies in Canada. Acadia is one of 2 national research forests that the Canadian Forest Service manages. The primary focus being research, but it's also a well-managed operational forest. We're very fortunate to have a number of LiDAR data sets to work with that go along with this area. There's been many flights made over that area over the past decade or so. So for this study, the 2012 1 point per square meter data set and a 2015 6 point per square meter data set. These 2 were used. They're both wall-to-wall data sets, which will allow for a nice direct comparison of LiDAR acquisition densities with a focus of species prediction. There are many steps that lead to species prediction or classification. First, you need to acquire the last files. Some provinces make these available where, available to the public, but some data sets need to be purchased from a service provider. We're really fortunate in New Brunswick. As Adam was saying, we have 100% coverage, and all this data is served up on SNB. So it's we're in a great advantage here. And Nova Scotia, they're moving towards the same as well, and they already have a ton of data available. So the next would be crown segmentation. This can be done through a variety of methods, from manual to like an open access or open source software. Step 3 would be training crown selection. Species must be identified to the corresponding crowns that were segmented or delineated. And then crown features or metrics are calculated where the point cloud is analyzed. And then we have the model calibration and validation, where you build the model, and in my case, I'm using a random forest model. And finally, the classification of the forest. So it's there's quite a few steps, and here's just part of the workflow that I use to generate the crown polygons. And mentioned I use an open source software called Segma, and that was developed by the University of Quebec in Montreal. It's a canopy height model based method whereby local maxima are defined, and then polygons are expanded and grown until they meet a certain defined threshold. So, and that's what lays the polygons down. So there are other methods of delineation, and they're available, such as LiDAR, which is an R package, and that certainly is worth investigating as well. So, so once we had crown layers, we then located our training crowns using a high accuracy GPS. We identified over 1,700 crowns, for the 2 LiDAR data sets. The accuracy is about 1 to 2 meters for a GPS. That's under forest canopy, and this allowed us to easily find corresponding tree crowns. So here are the species of interest for this study, which are these species are common to an Acadian forest. And due to the composition of the Acadia Research Forest, we did have a little bit of difficulty finding a lot of crowns for tolerant hardwoods, such as sugar maple, yellow birch, and we did manage to get enough samples, but we had to search high and low. So this slide here just shows a differences between the isolated 1 point per square meter and 6 point per square meter point clouds. This is just one individual tree I isolated. And so by calculating the three-dimensional and intensity metrics, we can see how predictions vary by point cloud density. So if you kind of look at those two images side by side, they look very similar. But of course, the one on the right is, it's denser. So the question is, how much more information and how valuable is that extra information? How much does that influence species prediction? And here's a list of the features that were calculated, and I don't expect you to read this all, but just so you know, there are dozens of features considered when making our predictions. So these here are only the three-dimensional features, and then we also have the intensity features as well. So there's a lot of calculations that go into the predictions or feature calculation. So, so I guess here's what we're all waiting for. Here are some preliminary results reporting on prediction accuracies. And just keep in mind, these were only considering three-dimensional points, and the intensity measures. So nothing else has been included. So it's kind of what we expected. The next slide will better illustrate the data. But I mean, not surprisingly, the average species accuracy for the 1 point per square meter data was less than the 6 point. So you have 33% versus 44% between the 1 and the 6. And the genus, it's a little closer, 41 to 44, but then you get into the type, hardwood, softwood, hardwood or softwood, 78% for the 1 point per square meter, and 85% for the 6 point. So really, the average, yeah, it was, but was a couple of things to note though too. The hardwood softwood or the type, it was predicted very well in the softwood species at the 6 point. The model predicted that most of the individual conifer species were indeed softwoods almost all the time. Even the average hardwood softwood for the 1 point wasn't horrible, like I said, at 78%. But to better understand all this, we need to drill down a bit into the results a little more. So on this graph, the species are listed on the x-axis and the percent accuracy of the model on the y. So the first bar in each species pair represents 1 pulse per square meter, and the second is 6. So as you can see, the largest gains in accuracy with the higher density LiDAR were the 3 spruce species and balsam fir. So these small crowns were more accurately classified with denser LiDAR. And in white pine, it proved to be the best overall predicted species. Early results suggest that hardwoods don't seem to benefit as much from the higher pulse density, which really is interesting, and we need to look into that some more. So here is a confusion matrix for the low density 1 point per square meter. So this is just, I've selected the best and the worst for comparison here. So looking at red maple, keep in mind this is at the 1 point data set. Only the model predicted red maple correctly 5 out of 52 times. So it really got confused with a lot of other species. And also the white spruce, 7 out of 50. So as you can see, they're really not that great. They get confused with many other species. And of course, now on the opposite side of things, the white pine, or the red pine, 22 out of 40 times, it was correct. And the white pine was 39 out of 58. So those are not bad. So it's quite diverse. So now when we take a look at the 6 point per square meter confusion matrix, the 6 point models perform better, of course. The worst performing species were, again, the red maple at only 8 out of 51, and white birch 6 out of 55. So it gets, again, it gets confused with a lot of other species, So and again, the best were the pines at 24 out of 52 for the red pine, and 43 out of 62 for the white pine. So, and this was all reflected in the percent accuracy table here for too. But so I guess when we're doing research, there are always challenges. Crown delineation can sometimes be sensitive to over or under segmentation. We had some difficulty in finding enough hardwoods, as I mentioned, but eventually did locate them. With low density LiDAR, the absence of points sometimes makes feature calculation impossible for the smaller training crowns. So just because we collected a training crown, depending on how the point distribution went, it might not have been suitable for feature calculation, because a lot of the features are calculated from, like first return, the ratio of the first return to the second return, or a certain percentile within the crown. So if pulses didn't get to those returns, then obviously you can't calculate them. So so another couple things, we're dealing with large data sets, resulting in sometimes long processing times. So some next steps, I guess, are to look at the effects of height class on predictions, incorporate contextual information and other remote sensing products. And I think this is going to be really interesting, and I think we're going to see some big improvements there. We're going to investigate other crown segmentation approaches, such as those in the LiDAR package that I mentioned. And we're going to look at testing other higher pulse density data sets for predictions. So I guess the overall message is we need to improve prediction results, so some more research is needed. And I'd like to end by acknowledging a number of individuals who contributed to this project, my UNB advisory committee, my CFS colleagues, both full-time staff and summer students, and finally JF Trigueur, who has helped me tremendously through our many in-depth discussions on point clouds, feature calculations, and species prediction. So with that, I will end, and thank you all.
Thanks very much, Jamie. All right. So with that, I'm going to bring Adam back, and so guys, well done. I'm just going to see if we've got any questions here. If anyone has a question, you can just post it there again by using the icon at the bottom of your screen. So we'll just give that a few minutes in that sense. And maybe if I can just ask, if you do have any questions, just to preface your question as to who you want to address it to, be it either Adam or Jamie in that regard. And we'll just give everybody a few minutes here. Okay. Obviously answered all their questions, guys.
I was just going to say that, Peter.
Well, we've got one here to James. What other remote sensing techs are you planning on using?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to probably start looking at some satellite bands, and maybe to try to pull out some reflectance values. I think that would be a really interesting one. And of course, there's multispectral LiDAR as well. So there's the opportunity in some places, if they have the coverage, to look at, instead of just the one band of wavelengths, we can look at multiple bands through these multispectral applications. So, I mean, really, it's it's open. So we're just, those are the first kind of things I'd like to maybe address.
Okay. Jamie, a second one here to you. Do you expect your species identification models, will they be applicable at larger scales? Well, the main thought is to try to scale them up eventually to a plot level, and actually that's how it really would be rolled out, at the management level anyway. I think all these scales are important. At the individual level, it's great to find those individual stems, but realistically, operationally, you're going to want to blow it up to a plot stand level.
So I think they'll be at larger scales. Yeah.
All right. This could be to either of you, just a general comment, great presentations, and with thanks. Curious if any progress or if you have any insights yet on identifying forest polygons / stand boundaries from LiDAR data.
I can go ahead. I've seen approaches to doing that. It hasn't necessarily been a focus of ours to date. I know when I was with the province, we at least using the existing stand polygon boundaries, we were able to, given the, hundreds or a few hundred EFI cells that fell within an existing polygon boundary, we would calculate statistics for that. So not only would you get your, your average volume, but you get a confidence interval on that or a coefficient of variation. And so that helped you understand sort of how homogeneous those stands were. And that would be, possibly a starting point to start to stratify some of those larger polygons, particularly where you're planning to start to do a harvest operation. Think of a commercial thin in a back corner that may not be quite suitable for treatment yet. You could easily sort of partition that area out. And I'm certainly sure that there would be some automated ways of doing that.
Jamie, anything there to add?
Yeah, no, I think Adam got it there good.
Okay. So to Jamie, you're looking at trying other points densities. What range? What are you looking at, or what are you considering?
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be nice to have a nice kind of a continuum of, low right up through. And I know we have another data set at Acadia, which is the first off I'm thinking of is we have a 50 point per square meter Adam purchased last year. It was flown. So we're going to maybe take a look at that and see what results we're going to come out of that. But certainly interested in trying, any range, 8 to 10 would be great. Yeah, because we have the low 1 and we have a 6. It'd be good to capture that 10 point, maybe 8 to 10 in there, and then again right up to the 50 and everything in between. So it'd be nice to try to develop some kind of a, some kind of a results matrix to see what the real impacts of the higher density really is.
Yeah.
But yeah. So if you have any crowns identified, crown data in those that density range, I'd love to talk.
What's the current accuracy of height, basal area, diameter when compared to the species identification that you're working on?
I would say it at this point it's more accurate than the species identification. I think that's fair, Jamie.
Yeah.
One interesting initiative we've had underway this fall in conjunction with the province of New Brunswick is we've been, as a means of trying to validate robustly some of these things, we've been putting out a series of 1 hectare panels, essentially with 16 prism sweeps within each of these panels, where we're measuring species and diameter and dominance and so on. I checked last week, we're already up to over 1,000 prism points that we've put in this fall. And we're continuing that work, and so that's going to give us a really robust independent validation data set, not only for the species prediction but also for estimates of basal area and so on. So it's really something we've been lacking. We can report on the model accuracy that comes out of the statistical model, but really where the rubber hits the road, how well does it fare when it's predicted back out of the forest? We'll really be able to answer those questions.
Mm-hmm. James, any thought of using biophysical info such as digital soil mapping layers and those elements to try to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think anything should be dismissed, because soil, I mean, as we know, soil, certain species will grow better in certain soil types, and so yeah, if we had mapping layers and wet area mapping, also I know there's recently been a species affinity map produced for the province. So, I mean, that would be another input. You know, sight's going to be a big driver. I mean, you know that, you know, chances are finding, say, a cedar on a hilltop, you know, it's pretty slim. So, so if we could kind of tease all that information out and use all that contextual info, I think we'll have a lot better predictability. Yeah.
Sort of in relation to one of the previous questions, you know, really what's in general, what's next with LiDAR? Do we need more than 6 points, or do we need to learn better analyses of the data itself? Or I guess just trying to look at that cost benefit, you know, as to what's going to do the trick.
Yeah, well, I think there's more analysis that needs to be done on the 6 point. So just something that I've noticed in the data is some of the large crown species, like, you know, the large hardwoods, the low density LiDAR predicted almost as good as the 6 point for that. So, and I think it's just a matter of, you know, you have a larger target. So of course you're getting those hits. So you're getting the general shape of it. But on those small crown species for the low density LiDAR, you're not really hitting a lot of those crowns. So you're losing accuracy there. But so I think first of all, we need to try to analyze it better, more inputs. But and if we only get so far in the 6 point, then we're going to have to try something else. But this is why we're trying to approach all these different questions at once. So we're going to look at the density question. We have all these different data sets available. So we're going to try to figure out the best kind of scenario. So it's a big job, and there's lots of work to be done in this field.
If I can just add,
yeah, go ahead, Evan.
If I can just add, you know, as I mentioned, we're trying to use some of the real data that's coming off of forest operations to, you know, feed back in. So, you know, we're kind of comparing apples and oranges. I have standing volume potential that's there, and then, you know, with my pulp production options and you know, utilization factors and everything, I'm never going to get actually what's standing volume there. And so we want to feed that back through so that we're able to you know, net down that volume. There's been a lot of work done to grow that forest inventory forward. So it's not anymore a static inventory, but each of those cells, we can grow that forward through time. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of LiDAR, the technology, it's changing so quickly. It's at this point, it's kind of hard to say what's going to be next. What, you know, if 10 years from now, New Brunswick, for example, wants to acquire yet, we don't know what technology is going to be out there. There's a LiDAR on the space station right now, and we've got a collaborative project with University of Maine where we're going to be validating some of the estimates coming off of the LiDAR sensor on the space station at Acadia and at Petawawa. So, you know, who knows, maybe 10 years from now, there's going to be a commercial vendor with a satellite-based LiDAR that's going to get us a scan every 3 weeks or something like that at a competitive cost. So the sky's the limit in a lot of ways.
Well, just want to thank everybody for the great questions. I guess we're going to have to kind of draw it to a close here just to meet our time commitments. Guys, you know, on behalf of the attendees and the CWF, certainly want to thank you again for taking the time to share your interesting updates and thoughts, you know, as part of our second webinar here. So really appreciate that. Well done. And again, we thank everybody for all their great questions. Just want to let everybody know to reaffirm that, you know, this session has been recorded, and we will be sending out the links, the necessary information that you'll need to access the links. And you guys have been both generous and you know, agreeing to share their slide decks as well with, you know, with their contact information. So lots of opportunity for further discussion, or if you want to reach that route to them directly with any further questions that you might have. So in addition to that, I'm also pleased we're going to be running our third session as part of the Woodlands Virtual Forum scheduled for December 10th. We'll be heading out with some more details on that here early next week, kind of shifting gears a little bit in a more operational focus, and where we've invited Carl Tingley with Forest Liaison Inc. and Jim Kettling from JDI Limited to present some of the opportunities and benefits of using training simulators in improving productivity in forest operations. So we look forward to that hopefully you can earmark, mark your calendars for December the 10th for that particular webinar. So that concludes our session today. Guys, thanks again. Well done. And on behalf of the Canadian Woodlands Forum, thank everybody for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. And so stay safe and bye for now. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity, Peter.
Thank you. Have a great day.